Okay, well, welcome everyone to the session today. I'm very excited about troubleshooting your data center tech refresh process. This is a great topic, in part because it's almost an overlooked or underappreciated topic depending on which part of the business you're in. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that data centers are often viewed as very static entities. And the reality is that given depreciation cycles or lease cycles of 3-4 years, that's between 25% and 33% of your data center's assets, most likely servers, are depreciated and should be cycled out of your data center. So that is a lot of equipment to be moving. So with that, I want to give you a little background on Nlyte software itself. Nlyte is a DSIM provider, and Nlyte helps reduce cost, time, to increase agility in the data center. And this is done by reducing complexity with the management of the data center's infrastructure. You can see all the great logos that Nlyte has our solution in on the right, no matter what the vertical. And recently, back on the left, Nlyte was named in the leadership quadrant for DCIM tools of September. Nlyte has been in business since 2004, focusing exclusively on DSIM, and 2 of the world's 5 most valued companies are current Nlyte clients. The architecture for Nlyte is very proven and robust. Some of the clients have well over 25,000 racks. That number has definitely grown by leaps and bounds. Over 150,000 servers at an individual client. Another client has over 600 workflow users. We'll get into that. And move adds changes, something that's very part and parcel of a data center. One of the Nlyte clients has over 10,000 moves, adds, and changes per month. So you can just imagine the complexity that's managed with that. And add that all up across all the Nlyte clients, there's well over 1 million assets. But back to the topic today. There is a risk-benefit trade-off with a technology refresh. And with technology refreshes, it all starts really at the center of asset management. That's really a technology refresh is all about managing those assets. And that has to be viewed at. Oftentimes you hear of asset managers. They're often SAMs, software asset management. But really the servers, the storage, the switches, they need to be managed themselves. And so there are things to consider. Is there a risk of having obsolete equipment? Is there requirements for the change that are not very well documented, or you think they are, but maybe they're not put into a process flow? And the other thing to balance is the fact of, oh, will I get a significant enough benefit from the technology? So the interplay between each of these things is what's considered. But the convention is, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I would contend, and I would say the research that's been assembled is that change is risky. But the flip side is really that not changing, the status quo, is actually risky. And we'll get into that research that shows exactly that. So keep all this in mind as we progress through the presentation. What I'd like to do is actually take a quick poll. So hopefully, let me launch this poll. And go ahead and answer. And it's how much does downtime increase how much does downtime in the data center increase based on the age of your equipment? So when you take a piece of equipment and say it's 3 years old, when it's 5 years old, how much more likely is downtime to occur on any individual piece of equipment? So I'll give some time for folks to go in there. Is it on the order of 25 to 50%, another 50 to 100%? Is it roughly doubling, or is it even more than 200%? So it looks like I'm getting some votes in here, and I'll give it one more second. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and go ahead and share it with you. So for the most part, it seems like folks believe, hey, it is definitely an increment. It's on the lower side, whether it's more like 25%, more likely 50%, more downtime. So let's keep this in mind as we go through, and I'll show you some of the research. Okay. So I would say that old equipment, whether it's 5 years old versus 3-year-old, is a financial problem in that actually causes risk. So again, mindset versus, hey, I don't want to change anything. Change is risky. I'm going to actually show you that keeping stuff in place is risky. And so the research from IDC is that there can be an increase when a server is 7 years old of over 6 times in IT support costs. So this could be replacing fans, power supplies, and whatnot. And you might be saying, oh, well, hey, Matt, 7 years, that's a really old server. I don't have that many old servers. And maybe you're right. So let's look at the number for a 6-year-old one. It's still over 4x as expensive for IT support. But even still, you might be like, hey, 6 years, I keep relatively good technology refresh cycles. So even if you go, and here's the shocking thing to me, is when you look from just 3 to 4 years, that's over 1.5 times. And so that increase alone, that's already more than that 50% that we were thinking about. For what I think is kind of the more likely scenario, that 5-year in the middle, that's 2.5 times as much. So the poll actually is a little bit misleading because it didn't even have 250% or greater on it, and only 10% of us indicated that was the case. So that's for IT support costs. Well, associated with that is the failure rate. And the failure rate skyrockets when you get to 7 years old. So it's a 6x increase from 9% of a 3-year-old server to 66%. These things are very faulty, and that is great risk. At 6 years, same type of approach, it drops down, but it is still 4x. Again, the shocking thing is when you go from 3 to 4 years, that risk, it's 1.5 times as likely. 9% fail versus 15%. And so this is the risk that we're facing. And again, at the more likely scenario, 5 years, it's basically 2.5 times as much. And so this is the risk that's manifested. I won't go quite as long, but when you think about downtime, it's even twice as high because it takes some time. You know, your time is important, and that downtime is what relates to the business. So, and I think this is the thing that in data centers we're challenged with, is saying, hey, what is downtime cost? Everyone just takes it for granted. Everyone takes IT for granted. Says, oh, well, you know, we were off 99.57% of the year, but those couple hours can translate into, if you're an online, say, retailer, how many clicks were you not able to process as quickly? How much abandonment from that website did you have? If you're financial services, how much extra time did that take the workers? How much productivity was lost? And so that translates into real business dollars. And so this downtime is considerable. And so for you know, us in the data center to service the equipment, you know, that downtime is there, so it's even twice as worse. So you can see the numbers again here. So again, if it's a 5-year-old server, that server on average will be down 2 hours versus 3.5 times as much. So this is the risk that research from IDC is showing with older equipment. So it's the opposite of what you say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or hey, look, you know, I was able to keep that older server up and running. That's not the case. And so I would say that this risk is not only not obvious, but it's also overlooked. There's certain issues that cause it, and some of these are human issues. But the old servers, the percentage of old servers beyond that, what I kind of call standard 3-year cliff, if you will, is 60%, over 60%. So they're older, they're inefficient. Moore's law shows, you know, doubling of compute power every 18 to 24 months. And so this is a problem. And so it's more than your data center. And this statistic alone, whereas before it should show that 25 to 33% should be changed out of your data center, you know, 3/5 of your data center is old and should be switched out. And this is a problem. The other issue is the classic zombie server or ghost server. These are servers doing no work whatsoever. Excuse me. The workloads may have been moved off with virtualization, or applications, they may have been test servers and just left in place. But a server just plugged in consumes 60% of the power as an active server. And so the research from IDC shows between 1/5 and 1/4 of all servers in a data center are zombie servers. So this alone says obviously they're not being refreshed, they're being left in place. So they should clearly be decommissioned. And of the old servers, 30% of them are not even under warranty. So they're even more prone to error. So this risk is just, it's very palpable when you look at it in this lens. So what is getting in the way? You know, what are you, if you're trying to get over that hurdle, as the image here is trying to indicate what's getting in the way, and these are actually the human issues. And so one is just visibility. You know, if you're using, say, spreadsheets to manage your data center, or even if you're a large entity organization and you're using a homegrown solution, how much visibility, how much are you aware of that information? Are you getting reports regularly to say, hey, these servers are due to be hit their 3-year mark in 6 months? Go ahead and line up orders for shipping new servers. Do you have a report like that? So you can't fix a problem if you can't see it very well. Next is kind of this thing about fear of changing something if it's not perceived to be broken. And so what you want to get away from is you want to get away from your staff working and hustling to keep servers up. Where are they? And making sure they're maintained well. And so you want to get away from fearing of changing things. You want to get into the habit of being proactive for technology refreshes. And statistically, this is akin to the ghost server ones, but it's actually just about inaccurate records. So those ghost servers, they sit there because they're not well documented. And so IDC shows that 75% of enterprise data centers have 25% inaccuracies in their data centers. So until they actually go through an audit, they either find equipment that shouldn't be there or equipment that they just weren't aware of. So 25% of their information. So again, how can you refresh items if you're not even well documented? And so this all has negative impacts. So the research shows that most organizations, 84%, have issues overall with data center space, power, and cooling capacity. These are the exact things that DSIM addresses. And so given older equipment, you're going to have more downtime. That's going to lead to unhappy customers. So whether they're internal customers in the IT organization or your business, or external customers that use your business, if you're financial services, manufacturing and ordering, or online retailing, you name it, this downtime leads to negative impacts with customers. And if you have service level agreements, you know, you don't want to be running around looking for equipment, or you don't want this older equipment, and so that's why refresh is so key, and that does lead to lost revenue. And that's the challenge for data centers, to really translate that downtime in your time, because you could be doing more proactive things. And so that actually does cost revenue. And so that's kind of the negative value chain from older equipment. And so here I'm getting to how can a good DSIM, data center infrastructure management, how can it help? And so the research shows that when considering challenges to data center, that one of the top priorities is making that link or chain between IT and business value. And so 81% of respondents, of data center respondents, said that it was either very important or top level important. And so the things that DSIM can help you do are just go down the checklist, reduce downtime, improve flexibility. I think this is very important for the CIO's office in particular. We'll get into that. Asset management was the thing that we started with. Technology refreshes is exactly that. It is asset management. And finally, reduce wasted spending. Because you want you and your staff to not just be managing old equipment. You want to be doing value-added items in the data center, like launching new initiatives. So let's get into each of these. So For reducing downtime, again, keep in mind, it is that older equipment. Once you get beyond that 3-year, it is going to break down more frequently. It's just, that is what the research shows. You may not even be that aware of it, depending on how well you are documenting your move ads changes in service levels. And so to reduce that downtime, you're going to need to know the age of the equipment. And the best way to do that is to improve your record keeping. And one way to do that is to get that asset data out of what I would call ad hoc solutions, Excel, Visio, and AutoCAD. And the reason is you want to be able to visualize it. So a good, decent system, and Light or even others, is you want to be able to visualize it in a floor plan layout, rack elevations, and cabinet-specific elevations. And then even who's responsible for that equipment. Think of it, a lot of the IT initiatives that higher value it says, hey, marketing, we're going to launch a whole new initiative. If you're a large organization, that could be 10 servers, 20 servers, 40 servers all at once. And with a good system, you can have visibility either like this or in a report that says, hey, these servers are this old, they're running this application, they have these virtual machines running on them. And so there's impact there. And so you want to be able to visualize that and say, okay, all the marketing servers from this initiative, they're such and such old. They're getting ready to spin. They should be decommissioned. The next item is moving flexibility around. So technology refresh. Think of it this way. If you think of storage, you have hot storage and you've got cold storage. And you're going to move your workloads for your databases that are onto the older storage if they're not accessed as frequently. And I think the same should be considered for more critical workloads. They should be moved to newer equipment. And so that is flexibility. But what you'll see is a lot of that's done at the virtual layer today. Since data centers are highly virtualized, that flexibility of movement is really considered at the compute level, but it actually, for the physical equipment level, that needs to be considered as well. And so if you need to do that, you need to have some visibility into your workflows to make it flexible. And so all the things we just looked at on the left, floor plan, cabinet level, there's actually an Nlight product called Nlight Server Energy Management. This is the OEMing of Intel's DCM, which is based in IPMI software that actually takes server-level power and temperature measurements, and that routes it directly to the Nlight system. And so if you kind of circle that, what's being circled there on the blue vertical bar is the average power that's being consumed versus that yellow threshold level. And so that's actually stranded capacity. So that server could, that cabinet could take more power. And the reason that's important is because of the virtualization, most people think of, oh, well, I can get all these, I can get the servers to take on more workload. But servers, while they do consume power, obviously individually, it's the limitation of the rack that has power. And so that rack level power is what needs to be measured. And so if you might be hitting a rack power threshold first. And so that's when you say, okay, I got to move this workload, even virtually, to another elevation of cabinet because I'm hitting that threshold. And that's the flexibility that a DSIM can help you with. The next is on the right side. Movement is also facilitated by what Nlight calls intelligent asset provisioning. These are all the criteria that are considered when moving a server. It's not just the use space, the rack type, the KVM provisions, but even the type of power, even the airflow that's indigenous to that cabinet. 13 criteria, and it's actually done automatically. And so in the Nlight system, you can bulk manage 100 servers at a time to an ideal location and put it elsewhere in your data center. They can tell you exactly where it should go, not just the cabinet, but the actual use slot as well. And so this is flexibility, where to move stuff very rapidly, where it is, and where exactly it should go. And then lastly, your time is valuable as well in the data center. And so this workflow is mapped out step by step. And this also has to do with the asset management. Is the equipment on the receiving dock? Is it scanned in? Do you know that? And then are you able to plug it in? And then are you able to then to get the instances of your software up and running? And so what are those process steps exactly? And so a good workflow management can actually provision based on your team and your team's availability and manage that workflow. And Enlight's research shows that once you sit down and map out your workflow, there have been on average 20% redundancies in processes that maybe weren't viewed as processes. It's just, hey, this is how we get stuff done. And so to manage it in a software such as DSIM. Okay, running a little bit low on time. So the DSIM does help you manage the assets. So this is all about the life cycle. So I've already mentioned a lot about, is the equipment planned? Is it actually purchased? Is it sitting on the dock in pre-production? Is it finally in use? And then is it finally decommissioned? And so if your software isn't really managing this very closely, it should be. And that's, again, to get it off your data center floor really when it's ready, whether it's 3 years or even 4 years for that lease or warranty cycle. We already talked about viewing cabinets, assets in the cabinet. And again, we already talked about the VMs, which, while they're germane to the compute capacity, that rack level power is an issue. And the expensive part is, if you're over warranty, you will get hit. And you may know this even better than I do, how much you're paying that. It's kind of like a double rate. So server companies can get you that way. And so in the Enlight system, if you just pull up a list, it'll actually show you by asset. Is it active and operational? Is it active and actually moving? Or is it planned, and is it moving between lifecycle steps? And then for any individual one, you can say, okay, I want to plan to recycle this and plan to decommission it. And then you kind of change that individual asset that way. And so this is how you can improve asset management, by actually tying it to life cycles and then reporting out on a master list. So this spending should be reduced. So again, your time, how much time are you spending finding a server? Because you have all these move, adds, and changes. You may not have 10,000 per month like that one Enlight client, but I do know that customers I've talked to or prospects I've talked to, they spend a lot of time generating reports in Microsoft Excel. It's just not easy to do. I have one client that actually reports out. They actually hook the Enlight product to Crystal reports with their overall corporate dashboard. And they just have lines of business. They just say, hey, they can go look up their own equipment that way. Cooling to a hot spot, I call this defragging your physical servers. If you have a single spot that's very hot rack-wise, you do not want to overpower your cooling to that one spot to get that one spot down. You want to move, and that has to do with the agility, move that equipment around, to literally move your physical workloads around, and that'll help, smooth out the power spikes in your data center floor from a floor plan perspective. And then worse is building out your data center. You don't want to needlessly build it out because you've got trapped capacity in a cabinet. Maybe you've got low workloads taking up space. Or conversely, you don't want to build out because you have all these zombie servers or ghost servers doing no work. So that's trapping physical or space capacity. So the automated work order helps you with speed and time. So it tells you front and back, left and right, which look like in the instructions below, tell you exactly what to connect to when. Automated generated reports, so much better than Excel. Just push a button, boom, it's generated. So this is just for this room. It's I'm just showing you part of the heat and space for each cabinet. And then again, the floor plan. So this is showing capacity used from a space perspective. So it's fairly red, but if I say used for power, it might convert. It might be only 1 or 2 red hotspots that you do not want to cool to. So with a super quick case study, there is a retail big box client of Enlight. They actually advertise on TV in the US quite a bit, and they want to improve their tech refresh process. So before DSIM, they were using spreadsheets, they were using diagrams, having a lot of trouble tracking this across their 4 different data centers, and they were having trouble tracking replacing assets. The problems that this caused, or symptoms, is they're actually overbuying. They're overbuying new equipment because they didn't know where the equipment was. They couldn't do an efficient tech refresh. So without that visibility, they're very slow to respond to management. So if CIO's office wanted a new set of servers in, they just didn't have places to put them, and they couldn't track the equipment very well. So their goal is to do this much quicker and improve their tech refresh overall. So the steps to do this, they were able to use a mapping tool, discovery tool, and for reconciling an asset. So they're able to look that up, compare it to their CMDB, and say, okay, this is a server. It's supposed to be in this rack. And then in a decent system like Nlights, you can actually design out and re-represent your floor plan very rapidly. You don't need AutoCAD to do that. You can actually lay it out very rapidly in the Nlights system directly. You can also ingest AutoCAD and Visio diagrams into the Nlights system if needed. So this client actually were able to identify with this reconciliation the assets needing replacement. They were able then to finally locate space. They weren't then over-provisioning their ordering, and they were able to consolidate the assets that way based on workloads. And they were able to do this in the Nlights system by predicting usage going forward. So with that, increased their visibility. They were able to analyze and report out much quicker to the executive management. And they used the workflow to huge effect. Again, this is over 4 data centers. And at the bottom, they had IT actually using the Nlight workflow on their own processes. It's not even in the data center, but in IT themselves, we're using the workflow. So they have over 500 employees just using the workflow completely outside of the data center. So a lot of benefits to this client. So if I were to say the top 5 things to troubleshoot your data center tech refresh process, I would say number 1 is highlight all these risks to the business, whether it's CIO, your infrastructure and operations management team, to say, hey, doing nothing is risky. Secondly is say, hey, I need to get my information in order. Spreadsheets or whatever system we have is probably not cutting it. And then establish a workflow, because that can cut down on redundant processes. And again, your time is money. And then to do that, you need to manage it to a schedule, even by a department if needed, based on workflow initiatives, IT initiatives, to say, hey, I think this IT initiative is due for a refresh. And then close that circle and report out to the business. So these are the processes I think will definitely help you troubleshoot your data center refresh process. Obviously, I believe DSIM is a great, although maybe not the only way to do this. So Margie, I have maybe time for 1 to 2 super quick questions, but I do want to thank everyone for attending today.
All right. Thank you, Nat, for that presentation. Very interesting. Let me just shoot you one question from the audience. Well, what is the biggest issue with tech refresh?
Good question. I think it is, well, it's a combination of not realizing it and poor information, and they're obviously connected. Most organizations do have CMDBs, and those CMDBs are historically and notoriously out of date. And that one issue alone is what is the problem. And a lot of those CMDBs, they are from IT, but they're not well maintained on the data center side. And so if you have a central repository from a DSIM provider, say like Nlight, that's that 20% disparity of information that goes on. And so if you're able to update that information, that will tell you right away. CMDBs do tend to say, oh, you have this many servers in this part of the organization, or on this maybe floor or room, but they won't tell you exactly where they are. And so that lack of exact grid location and elevation and what the workload is on it, that lack of information is that's kind of getting in the way. And so that informationally is probably the one biggest item that I would say. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, the most frequently asked question in webinars is, can I get a copy of the slides? And I will take that question, yes. By tomorrow, I will be sending out an email to all of you who have attended today with a copy of the slides and a link to the recorded presentation. So with that, we're going to wind it up. Thank you again to Matt Michelle for the presentation, and thank you to the audience for attending. With that, let's close the presentation, and thanks again.